Okay, fourth time's the charm. This is my first time trying to record this. Honestly, at this point, I don't care how this video turns out. I just need to get it out. First essay that I read from Sisters Outsider, or reread from Sisters Outsider, is Uses of the Erotic as Power. And the title alone made me think of the song Screw by Janelle Monáe. And she says in that song, see, everything is sex except sex, which is power. You know, power is just sex. You screw me and I'll screw you too. That made me think of, well, reading the essay and the title alone made me think of that song. And I think it kind of ties directly into some of the things that Audre Lorde is speaking to in this essay. So I wanted to mention that. I really love that song. I really love Janelle Monáe, and Dirty Computers was an amazing album. So there's a few things I think I want to touch on. I don't know, because honestly, like I said, this is just me kind of word vomiting right now and just trying to get out the thoughts. So I'm kind of going to be processing in real time in this video. But I think to start, I'll be referencing the draft that I have of my essay. I haven't finished. I have like a very, very, very rough draft. I've been writing and rewriting and scratching things out and referencing other things that I think relate to the thoughts that I'm having after reading or during my reading. So the kind of structure that I have of this draft are subheadings, my ideas, quotes, or excerpts from the essay that I feel like kind of aid in the thoughts that I'm having or push the thought along. And I do that for about 4 or 5 sections, but I want to start with my opening of the essay, and I entitled it Reclaiming the Erotic, and I'll just read, I'm reading off my phone, I'll just read my opening, and I read, this is, I guess, kind of the initial thoughts I had after my second read. My first read, I just wanted to, as I do with most things now, I just read it all the way through. And then my subsequent readings following my initial reading is where I take notes, where I kind of do my deep dive and I look up stuff. I find resources either online. I watch a lot of YouTube videos in regard to this essay to just kind of help me better understand the reading and kind of give me the verbiage to kind of explain what I think or how I feel, especially in terms of this essay, because I think it has had such an impact on me, and especially in this particular time in my life, I think it's definitely giving me something that I needed. So I'll just start with my intro. So I say, admittedly, before reading Uses of the Erotic as Power, I'd only ever associated the erotic with sex. Lorde offers a new perspective and challenges my idea of what the erotic is and all that it entails. She presents the erotic as a consciousness, a replenishing resource that we should tap into in pursuit of a deeper sense of self and fullness in our lives. In modern society, the idea of the erotic has been reduced to the narrow constraints of sex and service. For women, these constraints are accompanied by added layers of inherited shame, as the erotic is misdefined as a performance women do in service of men instead of an internal source of strength, and not even for their own pleasure. In this essay, Lorde challenges this bastardized definition and offers a radical shift in perspective. The erotic is a profound state of consciousness and a replenishing internal resource. By tapping into this fullness of feeling, women can dismantle the confines of their oppression and find solace in the satisfaction that exists outside of external factors. I think I repeated some things in that, but it was kind of just like me trying to formulate an intro. But those are pretty much my initial thoughts, especially in terms of only seeing the erotic as something sexual or related to a sexual act. So initially reading the essay, having someone present this idea of the erotic being so much more than that was kind of like, oh wow, I've never considered that, because I guess going by society's definition of that, that's all I could ever kind of imagine it to be. And the quote that I think really resonated or kind of stuck out to me during my first read comes from page 54, paragraph 1. I think this is like the very beginning of the essay. She says, "We have been warned against it all our lives by the male world, which values this depth of feeling enough to keep women around in order to exercise it in the service of men, but which fears that same depth too much to examine the possibilities of it within themselves. So women are maintained at a distant, inferior position to be cyclically milked, much the same way that ants maintain colonies of amphibs to provide a life-giving substance for their masters." So yeah, that was like very radical for me, like the first read through. And just in that, like the opening, it already kind of is shifting my worldview, because it's giving me something to consider that prior to it was not something that I ever even thought about for the most part. In the next kind of subheading that I have in the essay for my draft, I titled it "The Corruption of the Erotic." And I say, if the only feeling we associate with the erotic is negative, it is impossible to view it as a knowledge or power as Lorde suggested to be. When one is unfamiliar with this power, it forces us to stay docile, i.e. fall in line. And I think that first part, there's a quote that she says, "There are many kinds of power, used and unused, acknowledged or otherwise. The erotic is a resource within each of us that lives in a deeply female and spiritual plane, firmly rooted in the power of our unexpected or unrecognized feeling. In order to perpetuate itself, every oppression must corrupt or distort the various sources of power within the culture of the oppressed that can provide energy for change. For women, this has meant a suppression of the erotic as a considered source of power and information within our lives." So for me, reading that, I was like, oh wow, like I get what she's getting at in that particular excerpt. If society at large, male or patriarchy or whatever you want to call it, if they have the ability to change what the erotic is and kind of have this single viewpoint of it, then it's easier to kind of create like this negative connotation around it. So like for myself, the only thing or the only way I can think of the erotic is this sexual thing. And again, because of, I guess, the patriarchy or this male dominated world, for the most part, sex is not seen as something that women should even be enjoying. Like I said, like not for your own satisfaction. So if we can turn it into this negative thing, then it's easier to keep you from exploring that to be something more than what you think it is, or what you know it to be, or what you think you know it to be. So that was really like profound. That was one of the things that really got like my wheels turning. As far as like, I think too in this essay, like Audre Lorde is imploring people to explore and to go deeper. Like she mentions like this depth of feeling. She says that I think a few times in the essay. And I think when the erotic is only associated with sex, I think sometimes for society at large, and I don't want to keep saying society at large because I want to speak specifically for me, that can be kind of surface level. So the idea that you have to go deeper, like she says what is it, a replenishing resource, that can't be shallow. Then it has to be something more to it. And I think in the essay she's like urging the reader, I know she's speaking specifically to women in this, but I think she's urging the reader, me, to go beyond what has been presented to me in terms of the erotic. And that was something that was like very profound. And then the next quote that I think really stuck out to me for this section, she says, "We have been raised to fear the yes within ourselves, our deepest cravings, but once recognized, those which do not enhance our future lose the power and can be altered. The fear of our desires keeps them suspect and indiscriminately powerful. For to suppress any truth is to give it strength beyond endurance. The fear that we cannot grow beyond whatever distortions we may find within ourselves keep us docile and loyal and obedient, externally defined, and leads us to accept many facets of our oppression as women. I think this whole essay, like, I've read Audre Lorde before in the past. Like, I was younger the first time I ever picked up Sisters Outsiders. So I think being 30 now, and not that that's like super old, but I think when people say life really is the greatest teacher it is, like, you have to experience something. So coming back to this now, it's like, oh wow, like when they say your frontal lobe finally develops. For me, I described it to, I think, my younger sister as like somebody finally plugging my brain in all the way, like that light bulb went off. And that's how I felt like reading this entire essay. Each page I was kind of like, oh my god, like everything was mind-blowing for me, the first read, for sure. There's a few other things I want to touch on, and then I want to, I guess, kind of tie this all into, I think me turning 30 definitely has a big part of why I feel the way I feel after reading this, and then skydiving too, kind of, just all of it kind of goes hand in hand. But the next part, I titled it the Dangerous Woman, and I say, a woman who has experienced the depths of the erotic is deemed a dangerous woman. She is aware of its capabilities and therefore her own capacity for it. In turn, it forces her to strive for more. The knowledge won't allow her to settle. It gives her the ability to acutely recognize her condition and the condition of society at large, and demands better of herself and those around her. She is unwilling to adhere to the mediocrity accepted by the majority. And the first quote that I think really kind of pushed that idea for me was, of course, women so empowered are dangerous. So we are taught to separate the erotic demand from most vital areas of our lives other than sex. And the lack of concern for the erotic root and satisfaction of our work is felt in our dissatisfaction from so much of what we do. That, I'm going to come back to that because that is a big part of why I wanted to do the video. And then the next quote I pulled is, the erotic is a measure between the beginning of our sense of self and the chaos of our strongest feelings. It is an internal sense of satisfaction to which, once we have experienced it, we know we can aspire. For having experienced the fullness of its depths of feeling and recognizing its power and honor and self-respect, we can require no less of ourselves. It is never easy to demand the most from ourselves, from our lives, from our work. To encourage excellence is to go beyond the encouraged mediocrity of society, is to encourage excellence. But giving into it to the fear of feeling and working to capacity is a luxury only the unintentional can afford. And the unintentional are those who do not wish to guide their own destinies. What is the part that really for having experienced the fullness of its depth and feeling and recognizing its power and honor and self-respect, we can require no less of ourselves. That stuck out for me too. And then in my conclusion, obviously this essay I have a lot more to flesh out. Like, this is my very rough, I would say, like, first draft. But I guess in what I'm assuming will be my conclusion, I say, I picked up this book at the perfect time. The essay helped me articulate a particular emptiness I had been carrying around but couldn't put into words. Lorde suggests that our lack of feeling and not experience the true depth of our feelings leads to dissatisfaction in integral parts of our lives. And that felt like confirmation for me. There is a world outside of expectations if only I allow myself to live freely in it without the need for permission. On the other side of fear is my salvation, and the erotic can feel that emptiness only when I seek and allow myself to feel the depths of it fully. And then the quotes I used, or that kind of stuck out for me, for the erotic is not a question only of what we do, it is a question of how acutely and fully we can feel in the doing. Once we know the extent to which we are capable of feeling that sense of satisfaction and completion, we can then observe which of our various life endeavors bring us closest to that fullness. And then the second one, I say, or she says, the self-connection shared is a measure of the joy which I know myself to be capable of feeling, a reminder of my capacity for feeling. And the depths and irreplaceable knowledge of the capacity for joy comes to demand from all of my life for it to be lived within that knowledge that satisfaction is possible and does not have to be called marriage, nor God, nor afterlife. So, and then this is not even all of, like I'm across like 3 notebooks right now, and I'm using an app, I think it's called Notify, just to kind of help me bring all my thoughts together so it's not all over the place, or the essay isn't all over the place like this video will be. But yeah, reading that, especially I would say in the last like maybe 4 to 5 months, I've been like very dissatisfied in probably like life in general, but especially in my work and my career. And it's not that I hate my job or I hate where I work, or like I don't hate anything. It's just a feeling of emptiness. Like there is no connection between myself and my work. I know that the work that I do is important. I know that I support a group of people that are doing very important research and work across multiple departments. And I think starting out, that was enough to kind of keep me motivated and keep me going. But in the past few months, it's just been like, that's not enough, you know? And I think, like she speaks to, the once we know the extent to which we are capable of feeling that sense of satisfaction and completion, we can then observe which of our various life endeavors bring us closest to that fullness. The idea that one she speaks to, that the erotic is so much more than sex, and that fullness and that depth of fullness that we feel in the erotic or from it can be found in every area of our life. And that once we have kind of experienced the capacity or the capabilities of that feeling, and we know the depths of how much we can basically like handle it, like she said earlier, it's impossible to then go back to what you were doing before. So for me, I had already been feeling this dissatisfaction, and I think going skydiving kind of exacerbated all those feelings. If you never skydived before, for me personally, I don't think it's something I can explain or put into words that would ever get anybody to understand that feeling, because if you don't do it, I don't think it's something you could understand. Even watching videos, because I watched a bunch of videos the night before, specifically Will Smith's video I watched in January, and I booked the skydiving experience for to happen right before my 30th birthday, and we ended up having crazy weather because my birthday's in March, so I had to reschedule for April. So in between that time, I watched a bunch of videos, I did a bunch of research, just trying to prepare myself, and even still, nothing that I watched, nothing that I read compared to the feeling and doing of that experience. So and this is why this is going to be all over the place, because I have so many thoughts around it. But I think I understand now in her saying, like, once you know the capabilities of feeling, and you felt something that intensely and that deeply, I now recognize that I can feel that in everything I do, including my work, especially my work. In every area of my life, not just my work. And I remember like standing on the edge of the plane before we jump. And I did a tandem jump, obviously, because it was my first time, and I couldn't, obviously, they're not going to let you skydive by yourself on your very first time. So I remember the skydiving employee that I was jumping with being behind me, and we're at the edge of the plane. And when you do a tandem jump, you have to squat, and your actual jumper or the diver that you go with, they like do all the real work to get you out of the plane. And I remember watching all the people that were on the plane, because funny enough how it worked out, I work for a university, and one of the courses at the university, I'm assuming it has something to do with aviation, the students have to do a certain number of hours of skydiving. So they do tandem jumps at first, which I was doing, and then they do solo hours. So I happened to be on a plane with a group of students who were doing either their very first or some of their very first solo jumps. So I think it was like 17 of us in the plane in total. 2 of them being the pilot and the co-pilot, and everybody else being jumpers. So there were students there, and then the workers at the place that I went skydiving to kind of guide the students in their solo jumps. So one thing I remember is, one, it didn't take long to get to 14,000 feet. I was like, I thought we'd have more time to kind of like prepare myself, you know. Not that there's anything you can do to prepare yourself, because once you're in the plane and you up there, like, that's it. But I remember them all jumping so fast and thinking like, dang, why is everything going so fast? But we were the last to go. We get to the edge of the plane. He doesn't count down or anything, which I'm glad, because I feel like that would have made me more nervous. And he just jumps. So I want to say like the first 15 to 30 seconds, my eyes are like completely shut. Before we jump, I remember looking down and like, oh, like just feeling the emptiness in my stomach. But then I remember like saying to myself, Bridget, we did not do all of this for you not to see or look, you know, while we're skydiving. So I open my eyes, and it takes a minute for me to kind of settle into myself. But once I do, I'm like, oh my God, like, I think one of my very first thoughts was, this is not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Like, obviously, skydiving, jumping out of a plane, you're like thinking this is going to be terrifying. And not that it wasn't, but in a moment, it was like this kind of calmness that I don't think I've ever felt before. I guess I assume that's kind of like what maybe nirvana or like euphoria feels like, but it was a lot more peaceful than I was expecting it to be. Like, I think you free fall for maybe a minute or two. Like, it's definitely not long, but you falling so fast, it felt like just a second. But I think it was like a minute or two before he actually like pulls the parachute. So I remember like feeling like serene. It was very peaceful, even with like the wind smacking my cheeks and everything, and hitting me in my face, and my eyes like watering because we're falling so fast. I remember it being very peaceful, and I think it being like a feeling definitely that I had not experienced before. I want to say like 15 to 20 minutes after I got super sick and I barfed. But I remember like the drive home, because the place was like an hour and a half away from my apartment. So I had a bit of a drive there and then one back too. So I had time to really like sit with myself. And usually, especially when I know I have a bit of a drive, I'll make sure I have a playlist or whatever radio from Apple Music on to kind of get me through my drive. For majority of that drive, I drove in silence, because it was all like obviously trying to process everything, but then this emotion I had never felt before that was still like, I don't even know, maybe it was my adrenaline, I'm not sure. But I think after being home and like taking a nap and everything, and like really kind of settling and the adrenaline wearing off, it was in that moment where I had to pick up the book again and read the essay again, because I was like, I think I know what she's speaking to, like feeling something that deeply, and it not being sexual at all, obviously. I was like, this is erotic, you know? And I think for the first time, that was like, not only that I understood what she was saying, because I feel like you can read something and comprehend it, but after having skydived, I was like, I understand what she's speaking to now, because I felt something that deeply and that intensely, and it's not sexual at all. but I understand what she's speaking to. And now, kind of what I was feeling before in that emptiness and not just my job, but maybe other areas of my life too. It's going to be difficult or hard for me to now go back and kind of keep getting along to go along, or going along to get along. And I think she speaks to that, like that mediocrity, because that's what I feel like is happening in my work now. But now that I've experienced something that deeply, and I know that I am capable of handling it, and I have the capacity for it, I am now seeking that in other areas of my life, especially in my work. So I think like reading the essay, skydiving, just a number of things has kind of put in my mind that one, there has to be some type of internal change for sure, because like Audre Lorde says in the essay, this resource is internal and it's outside of any external factors. She says it does not have to be called marriage, nor God, nor afterlife, and is urging women, the reader, whoever is engaging with this text, to seek that, to look for that. And I think having had that experience, for me, it's like, okay, how do I now utilize the erotic, that feeling, that depth in everything that I do? And for me, it brought up a number of things. Like I said, it got the wheels turning, but it made me question a lot of things. But I think probably the biggest thing is, one, in my work, because that was something that I had already been feeling like very dissatisfied with. But I guess it brought up the question of, now that you know you're capable of this, you know that what that feeling is, and that you have the capacity for it. How do you use that to power your work? And maybe it have like several cuts of this, which is annoying me, but it's fine. But yeah, I think in reading this essay, it definitely put things in perspective for me. It gave me a new perspective in terms of, I guess, everything. I think my next read out of Sisters Outsider is the use of anger, which I think I'm even more excited to kind of to get into, because if she was able to kind of change my worldview in the terms of the erotic in this essay, like this essay is maybe like not even 7-8 pages. What can, or how can my viewpoint of anger, like, what is that going to look like post-read? So I would recommend this to anyone that is kind of like, I would say feeling stuck, a little unsure, and looking for, I guess, answers to questions maybe you haven't even asked yourself, or ones that you didn't even know you needed to ask yourself. I think this essay gave me a starting point to kind of maybe like a launching pad to the next steps in, I guess, 30 for me. It gave me a lot to think about.